Okay, guys.
Make sure you get that sound.
So next we will be moving back to a more general view, and we will be looking at a couple of books, one by Asif Bayat, and we'll start with that, Revolution Without Revolutionaries, which is reminiscent of the book written by Ghassan Salami, Democracy Without Democrats, I believe in 1994 or something like this, in the 90s, and subtitled Making Sense of the Arab Spring. Not a favorite title of mine, Arab Spring or term. It's reviewed or published by Stanford University Press, and it was recently published in 2017. Now, the book has a number of chapters that illuminate the concept of a revolution without revolutionaries, and I'll read a few of these chapters, if not all. Revolutions of wrong times, Marx in the Islamic Revolution, revolution in the everyday, not a theology of liberation. And let me just say that the revolution in the everyday is reminiscent of his other book that is titled something as politics.
Life as politics.
Lights as politics? Life as Politics, where he talks about quiet encroachment. It's actually a very powerful book. So I think Revolution in the Everyday harks back to that. 4, Not a Theology of Liberation. 5, Cities of Dissent. 6, Square and Counter Square. 7, The Spring of Surprise. 8, Half Revolution, No Revolution. 9, Radical Impulses of the Social. 10, The Agony of Transition. And 11, Revolution and Hope. I'll give it to my colleague,
Awesome.
Nadia.
Thank you. So Revolution Without Revolutionaries is both a history of the Arab Spring and a history of revolution writ broadly. Setting the 2011 uprising side by side with revolutions of the 1970s, particularly the Iranian Revolution, Asif Bayat reveals a profound global shift in the nature of protest. An acceptance of neoliberal policy has spread, radical revolutionary impulses have diminished. Protesters call for reform rather than fundamental transformation. By tracing the contours and eliminating the meaning of the 2011 uprisings, not eliminating. Although, Bayat gives us the book needed to explain and understand our post-Arab Spring world. Asif Bayat is the Catherine and Bruce Bastian Professor of Global and Transnational Studies and Professor of Sociology at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. This book has been praised by Huang Cole, who's also a historian and author of The New Arabs, Arang Kashavarzian, author of Bazaar and State in Iran, and Olivier Roy, author of The Failure of Political Islam. And it also has a very nice cover. Ziad and Abdullah, have you familiar?
Contrary to what we decided,
We are
we
continuing
just
to the
repeated exactly what Nadia said we shouldn't do. But go ahead.
No, I would just say that I can't think of anyone really better to comment on the sort of broader trends that have been occurring across these societies than Asif Bayat. I mean, we've seen it with his previous work. Life as Politics, as you mentioned, I think it still stands out as one of the works that has kind of takes the best reading of what was happening in the lead up to these uprisings. And he also makes very strong use of a kind of a comparative approach, given his kind of deep knowledge of both Iran and Egypt, as he's done, I think, even in his earlier work on the post-Islamist turn. And we've been fortunate, even at Jadaliyya, at the Critical Currents in Islam page, to be able to host Asif as part of a roundtable series that we've done, in which he sort of discussed the future of Islamist movements, and he kind of keeps his finger on the pulse of what's happening across the region in a way that I think is really something that's worthy of all of us kind of paying attention to.
Yeah, I think I mean, not to compare them as individuals or as writers, but if you think of Yassin Haj Saleh as being one of the main voices in the Syrian opposition throughout the uprisings, I think Asif is someone that many of us have followed throughout the uprisings as he sought to make sense of different turning points. And I remember his article turned book chapter on Arab revolutions, where he tries to move away from the binary between revolution and reform. And I think this is his attempt to elaborate on that into an entire book argument, taking into account changes since then. So he's definitely someone that I think we all have to take stock of and read. And he's on my list actually for this summer. So I'm looking forward.
I'm actually teaching a course on text, film, and the Arab uprisings, and I actually now just realized that half of these books are on my list, including, of course, Marwan's book on the media, as well as other books that we didn't review here, which we might review in future installments, including our book, actually, at Tadween Publishing that Adil Iskandar and myself co-edited on the, it's called Mediating the Arab Uprisings, except that it's a bit older. It's in 2014, I think, and it's written by one of the co-hosts. So I don't know if it's cool to talk about it, at least not early on. So guys, it seems like Nadia and I are talking about the basics, and you guys are the brains and the brain trust of the show. But I'm sure, if Nadia and I want to say something, we can just chime in.
Well, I was just gonna say.
Not really.
Oh.
Okay.
Not really. What?
That's fine. I listen to orders.
Well, this structure certainly shifted. I just want to go back to the point that you raised when you were reading the title, Bassam, which is it is curious that he uses the phrase Arab Spring, because in general, I think in across disciplines, people have really problematized that phrase and moved away from it, using more Arab revolutions, Arab uprisings, or various other iterations on the theme. So I'll be curious to know sort of how he addresses that term in his text.
And with that, we actually have to move on to our last book, or one of our last books, and we will move now to